So who's going to the parade next week? Oh my goodness. All right. So those of you who are in this group, you know me as the guy who every Sunday I'm very critical of the Browns, but I make the post every Sunday. The past couple of weeks, I've had things to do, so I haven't been able to post like I normally do, but here I am. Um, on YouTube, I have a Browns channel called Raw Dogs Radio, also a Twitter called Raw Dogs Radio, where last year I did a summation after every game, but after the first 2 weeks of this season, I realized that I was wasting my time and I would probably say the same things over and over again. And I find myself right now saying the same things I said last year here at the end of the season, that the Browns need a quarterback. The Browns need corners and safeties, and the Browns need pass rushers. Now, also they need a middle linebacker. They finally stepped up the running, not necessarily the running game, but the passing game, because Josh Gordon came back, which helped open up the wide receiving core. I mean, you saw that Higgins had 2 touchdowns today, a long one and then a quick one down at the goal line, after having no touchdown receptions at all. That's what Josh Gordon brings to the game. We heard Hugh Jackson for 2 years say that, well, we're going to run the football. We're going to run the football, which, as we have seen for the past 2 years, especially this year in particular, was the Browns' strength, being able to run the football, which he did not do. Isaiah Crowell averaged throughout the season 12 carries a game. It didn't matter whether he had 12 carries for 12 yards or if he had 12 carries for 150 yards, he only got 12 carries on average. Didn't matter. Duke Johnson was lucky to get 2 or 3 carries per game, even though he was the most dynamic offensive playmaker throughout the season, even when Josh Gordon came back. So here we are at 0-16 after going 1-15 last year. But at least we have a lot of draft picks, 2 in the first, 3 in the second, couple in the third, couple in the fourth, couple in the fifth, 2 in the sixth, 1 in the seventh, I believe. Houston Texans, I hope that they lose today's game. Please tell me Houston Texans lost today's game. I'm waiting on the ticker to go by so that way I can at least go, hooray, high draft picks. Okay, they're showing everybody else. I'll get to it. I'll keep an eye out for it. Let me scoot back so I can watch the TV here to see if Houston lost to the Indianapolis Colts, which is probably the first time any of us in the history of the world that are Browns fans actually gave a damn whether the Colts beat the Texans in a regular season game. Because do understand, we own Houston as number 1 and number 2, and if I'm not mistaken, their 3rd round draft picks. I think we own all 3 of their 1st, 2nd, and 3rd round draft picks for this coming off season. If not, I know we definitely own their 1st and 2nd. At any rate. All right, so let's begin with the front office. Let's start with the front office. As much as I want to start with ownership, all right, you know what? Let's start with ownership. Jimmy Haslam was coming out of being a minority owner of the Pittsburgh Steelers. And we thought when he first took over the franchise that, okay, we have an owner coming from a winning franchise. Hopefully he's learned something. Maybe he can get it going. Maybe he can push this culture forward to where the Browns will be able to turn around and start winning. And as we saw, as he fired coaches after 1 year and 2 years, And then we finally got Hugh Jackson, because do remember that we were, and by we, I mean we as Browns fans were hoping that the Browns would be able to get a head coach worth his salt. And let's be honest, we wanted Chip Kelly. Thank God we didn't get him, although we were quite mad at that. All right. Thank God that we didn't get Chip Kelly. Who was the other choice? Remember, we wanted Dan Quinn, but we weren't sure. And what did he wind up doing? He wound up with Mike Shanahan as his offensive coordinator, almost beating the Patriots in the Super Bowl, except in the second half, for some reason, they decided not to run the football. Sorry, Paul. I'm looking for. Oh yes, the Colts won. The Colts won. We have 2 top 5 draft picks for the first and second and possibly third rounds this year. Yeah. Okay. Sorry, Paul. I was waiting on that. So the Colts beat the Texans 22-13. So now we can talk. All right. At least something good came out of this season, outside of just having the number 1 pick in every single round this draft. For the second year in a row. So we thought that he could bring the Steelers' winning ways to Cleveland. Now, I hate Pittsburgh as much as everybody else does. That's a Browns fan, but they are the class of the division. If it's not them, it's the Ravens. And yes, we're mad that Ozzie Newsome is not being the general manager for the Browns, but we have to get over that. He chose his side. It's done. So after Banner and Lombardi, which we knew the NFL was setting the Browns up for failure, we knew that was happening. He quickly got rid of them. Thank goodness. All right. And then he brought in, after that, it was Ray Farmer. Ray Farmer, who, in all honesty, we were like, he's inexperienced. Let's give him a shot. And he messed that up. All right. So then you give the shot to the lawyer, to the Harvard grad. And let's be honest here. Sashi Brown, he did set the Browns up to the position where they are now, where they have the highest cap space, well, the lowest cap space of any team in the NFL, and they have the most draft picks of any team in the NFL. They are in perfect position to where come 2018, they should not lose more than 9 games. Do you understand? If anything, you should be 8-8 next year with how everything is set up. The difference is what happens on the field. The difference is in coaching. Also, the difference is in who do you bring in as players to fill the gaps, to make the crucial plays, who are going to be your skill positions, because the offensive line is solid, except for left tackle. We lost Joe Thomas. Joe Thomas sounds very optimistic from all of the interviews that I read. It seems like he wants to come back, although I thought he would retire. Because after the Chicago game, it looked like the team had gave up. I didn't think that they would be as stout as they were against the Steelers today, against the Steelers' second and third stringers. But it turns out they were. Who knew? Corey Coleman, last year's number 1 draft pick, who has yet to actually show that he's a number 1 draft pick. If he makes that catch, not only on 4th and 2, no matter what happens after that, he becomes the local hero. But instead, he was the summation of the past 2 years, especially this season, where you are in position to make the big play and you fail to do so. Normally, DeShone Kizer is the one that kills us, or the defense is the one that kills us. But DeShone Kizer, this game, actually stepped up and played. I mean, he had some horrible throws in this game. absolutely stupendously horrible throws in this game where he wasn't even touched. But he played with heart and grit and might. He played like he literally, truly wanted to win. The last time he played with so much grit and determination was against Detroit. And we saw how that went. But he played like he wanted to win. He escaped the pocket. He escaped the tackles. He threw it to a wide open Corey Coleman who, and I mean, let's be honest. Corey Coleman, as much as we bash him, man, he was the sickest man on the field today. You saw him. You saw the cameras on him. He had the towel over his head. I bet he was crying. And I felt so bad for him because he really, everybody on that Browns team wanted to win the day. Caleb Brantley with the great fumble recovery in the air, just in case they ruled it a forward pass. He made the catch. He just couldn't stay on his feet. That would have been a great fumble recovery or interception return, whatever they would have ruled it. That would have been a great return for a touchdown, but it's fine. He got the ball back. All right? At least they played to win. They didn't quit today. They didn't quit today. Walter said, we went 0-16. It's over. It happened. Let's talk about our future, not our past. So what is or what could have. We need to look forward to our draft picks and who we can acquire with our cap space. Who are we grabbing in the first round, in your opinion? Okay, well, we'll get to that. We'll get to that. Hold on, Walter. We're going to talk about that. So, I'm talking about ownership and Sashi Brown. I think right now, he made the great choice. I mean, too bad that he had to fire Sashi Brown. But he did bring in a football guy. All right. We finally got a football guy, an experienced football guy, a proven winner in that front office to be the general manager, who has an eye for talent. Look at Kansas City. Look at how he changed that roster over within the 2 years that he was there. Of course, he lost the battle, the power battle, with what does Kansas City's head coach though? Fat bastard, fat bastard, looking like he wants to eat children. Oh my God, Andy Reid. He lost the power battle with Andy Reid. Of course he is, because I mean he's not the smartest guy. He's not the most articulate guy, but he does know football. And Andy Reid is very smart, very articulate, and he knows talent. So of course he was going to lose that battle. But he's not going to lose the battle here in Cleveland. And I think that's why Sashi Brown was removed. Because Sashi Brown is very intelligent, very, very articulate. He can talk circles around our new GM, whose name actually escapes me. I'm sorry, because I've suffered a tragedy this week. So I'm not as astute as I normally am. Who is the Browns GM? Let me know so I can make sure that I'm very very accurate when I talk about these things, fellas. But he's in there now. And of course he wants to fire Hugh Jackson. But ownership wants to keep Hugh Jackson because they feel that Hugh Jackson is the best coach for the job. They, as far as the Steelers, all right, the Steelers and the Bengals, they had serious battles back and forth back when Hugh Jackson was the offensive coordinator. Hugh Jackson, as we know, is very respected and very revered throughout the NFL. And as we know, as we found out, that Hugh Jackson has a very big ego and he's a very big liar. All right. He is a pathological liar. He will always throw people under the bus. As far as Hugh Jackson is concerned, it's everybody's fault but his. I mean, of course, he'll say, we got to coach better. I got to look at the tape. We got to play better. No kidding. If the players and the team aren't playing better, whose fault is that? If you have offside penalties, holding penalties, false start penalties, that's on coaching. How hard is it for you to coach the players to say, hey, the snap count is on 2. Don't move until you hear the second hut. Then you move. You don't. How hard is it to not hold somebody on a kickoff or punt return? How hard is it to not be offsides on defense? How hard is it to say, hey, okay, the ball is spotted at the 35. Here's the 35-yard line marker. Let me make sure my toes are on this side of the 35-yard line marker. Let me make sure my hands are on this side of the 35-yard line marker. Whose fault is that? Who's coaching them to be disciplined like that? Discipline is part of coaching. Exactly, Paul. Fundamentals are not being coached on this team. This is why a lot of people, as I've read in this group, you want to have the special teams coach fired, and I completely agree with you. Chris Tabor, I believe his name is, they keep trying to save this man's job. For what? Ever since he's been the Browns special teams coach, I've seen kicks and punts and kick returns happen. I've seen kicks get blocked, punts get blocked. I've seen punt returns happen, whether they're for big plays or for touchdowns, as we saw today. Piss poor tackling, holding calls. Ever since he's been the Browns special teams coach. So please tell me, why is he held in such reverence? Anybody? Anybody? Bueller? Why is he held in such reverence? All right, let's get to the coaching staff since we jumped into it. Let's get into the coaching staff. Hugh Jackson for the first part of the season. With what he was given, and we knew during preseason, because those of you who would actually follow the Browns very staunchly knew that the wide receiving core this year was going to be garbage. We knew that. We know Corey Coleman is very brittle. Every time he's out there on the field, he can't make a catch without breaking a hand, bruising some ribs, spraining a foot. He's very brittle for a number one pick because he's small and he doesn't work out and he doesn't build his calcium deposits. They're not strong. People say you drink milk to do that, but there are other ways to build your calcium deposits. Whoever is on the Browns strength and condition, whoever is the Browns strength and conditioning coach needs to be fired. Because the reason why you break bones is because your calcium deposits are deficient. You know you got little guys out there. Build them up. You know this is a tough game. Build up. You have to build strong bones and muscles. That's just common sense. A nutritionist will tell you that. So who the hell is the Browns strength and conditioning coach? Get them out. Bring in somebody else. Anyway, you knew the Browns wide receiving core was garbage. Somebody please tell me why Hugh Jackson for the first month and a half of the season was trying to run his Cincinnati Bengals offense with go routes and 9 routes and banana routes, with wide receivers that can't get open, with an offensive line that still hadn't gelled, all right, with a rookie quarterback who was still having problems reading a defense and knowing when Penn got open. What did you say? Vic said, a soft-spoken coach is a reflection of his team. Who has any fire in their belly on our team? None. Exactly. Because your team is a reflection of the head coach. I've always said that for this Browns team in this division, you need a leader amongst men as a head coach. You need a head coach that you think will fight you in the locker room if you screw up. You need a head coach that will grab you by your face mask or your collar when you come off the field after making a boneheaded play. You know who, I put it like this, Bill Walsh was not a in-your-face, I might kick your tail type of coach. He was not that. He was very cerebral. Dwight Clark, I mean, because I back when, after the fumble, all right, I switched over to being a Niners fan because they had beat the Bengals, all right, or whatever. But anyway, I read this book. Dwight Clark said that Bill Walsh, when he was in a rookie and he was in training camp, Bill Walsh just walked past him and said, "You're fading on me out there." I mean, he would just, and Dwight Clark said, "Oh my God," he felt that he was about to get cut like that night. So he went out the next day and worked twice as hard. Keep in mind, Dwight Clark was a 10th round draft pick. We don't even draft in the 10th round anymore. He was a 10th round draft pick, a tall, lanky, slow white guy. And he's in the Hall of Fame because he had a head coach that pushed him, that scared the bejeebus out of him. Because Dwight Clark knew that if he got, at that point in time, within the first 5, 6 years of his career, he knew that if he got cut from the 49ers, nobody was going to pick him up. And do remember, within the first 3 years of his NFL career, the Niners were garbage. 79, 80, it wasn't until 81 that they won the Super Bowl. You understand? But it wasn't because of Dwight Clark. And then you had 82 and then 83. And none of that was because of Dwight Clark. I mean, he made big catches. He was a possession receiver, but he was no Jerry Rice. He was a tall version of Steve Largent. Do you understand what I'm saying? He was a system wide receiver. So he went out and busted his tail. All right, he went out and busted his tail for his team and his head coach because he knew at any moment he might be cut. If he doesn't play up to his potential, he could be cut, despite being a Super Bowl champion. There is none of that on this team. Look at how long that cancer Kenny Britt was on this team before the new GM came in, and the first move he made was to cut him. Of course, he should have cut a few more players, like some of those wide receivers. He should have cut a few more players, but he didn't. He didn't. But he did send a message. And the locker room seemed to have straightened up. You no longer heard about all of the tomfoolery, if I can use such a word, coming out of the locker room. Suddenly, all of that ceased and desist because Hugh Jackson at the time didn't have the power to cut players. That was totally on Sashi Brown, who, of course, as we know, signed Kenny Britt, who didn't care that Kenny Britt was garbage on the field and garbage in the locker room. Because, analytics. Leo said, "I need a coach who is hard, not soft on players all the time when they suck. Tell them, not baby them." Exactly. Hugh Jackson is not that type of guy. Greg Williams is. I don't know if y'all know this. The difference between the offense and the defense early in the season, before teams started getting tape on the Browns defense and was able to expose the Browns defense and figure out their tails and everything, like when they're getting ready to make a big blitz and the safety runs 40 yards downfield. All right. The defense played solid. The defense played well enough to win games, but the offense didn't. Simply because you didn't have a head coach who also served as the offensive coordinator that scared the bejeebas out of their players. We haven't had a hard-edged coach since '99. We need to figure out will we be a running team or a passing team. Personally, we should have been a power running team the past 2 years. Win, lose, or draw. Isaiah Crowell should have been getting 25 to 30 carries a game. Isaiah Crowell should have been getting 25 carries a game with Duke Johnson getting 15. Flat out. With whoever was playing with Matthew Days this year, Matthew Days should have been averaging at least 10 carries a game this season, instead of just returning kicks sporadically. You have a rookie quarterback you're throwing 30, 40 times a game. And then you get upset when, of course, he's garbage because he still hasn't adjusted to the speed of the game. Anyway, you guys got me all over the place. Let me bring it back. Hugh Jackson was not in the first month and a half of the season. Hugh Jackson was not coaching to the talent of this team, to the talent caliber of this team offensively. He finally did in the middle of the game. Now, do understand when Kaiser went out and Cody Kessler and who was the other guy who we never saw again? We never saw him again. Geez, I cannot figure out that quarterback's name. Uh, the one who came from Kansas City, who went to Stanford. But anyway, when Kaiser went out and those two players went in, those two quarterbacks went in, Hugh Jackson coached to the level of his talent, which is, you have garbage wide receivers. So he went with the short passing game, the play action pass, power run, which is what he should have been going with throughout the whole season. He should have been running that offense the whole season. If teams know what we're doing, okay, too bad. Try to stop us. Try to stop us. You should have been throwing screens, okay? You should have been running flea flickers. You should have been doing something, all right, to bore teams, to lower them into a false security and then striking deep, knowing that you didn't have wide receivers out there. Knowing you didn't have wide receivers out there. So what, they know we're running on first and second down. You just spent $400 billion on an offensive line. Run block. Your specialty will be run blocking. As a matter of fact, I think that was Kevin Zeitler's specialty was run blocking. What happened there? What happened there? In the second half of the season, he coached to his team's level of ability. And also in the middle of that, I would say after the Vikings game, Hugh Jackson lost faith in DeShone Kizer. And he let it be known through the media that he didn't care about DeShone Kizer. Remember the press conference where he said, I'm not worried about his confidence. I have 52 other players to worry about. Woo! What type of mess is that for a head coach to say? That let me know right there that he was done with DeShone Kizer. I was like, he's just going to throw DeShone Kizer out to the wolves. And as we saw for the rest of the season, that is exactly what he did. He threw DeShone Kizer out to the wolves. He didn't care if DeShone Kizer succeeded or failed. And DeShone Kizer for the rest of the season after the bye week, when they botched the trade. Oh my God. When they botched the Bengals trade, I'm going to put it to you like this. They were saying the rumors were out that Sashi Brown nixed that trade, that he botched the trade on purpose. And in all honesty, if he did, bravo. Bravo, because that was a horrible trade. A second and a third round pick for a backup quarterback that was unproven. All because you panicked because the Niners got Jimmy Garoppolo. And people are saying that Bill Belichick didn't want to trade Garoppolo to the Browns. You could have easily gave the Patriots a first round pick for Garoppolo. They would have taken the first round pick. You can't tell me that they wouldn't have. Or you could have went ahead and made a multi-team trade with the 49ers. Before the trade deadline even popped up, you should have went ahead and went to the Niners and said, hey, look, if you guys can get Garoppolo from the 49ers, from the Patriots, because they don't want to trade them to us, we'll give you guys a first round pick. Therefore, you can get your quarterback. Matter of fact, we'll give you our first round pick. All right, not the Texans. We'll give you because remember at the time the Texans were looking hot because Deshaun Watson was burning up the league. 15 touchdowns, 3 interceptions before he went down. He was leading the league in touchdown passes before he went down. So we'll give you our number 1 pick if you can pry Garoppolo from the 49ers. And the 49ers probably would have, at that time, would have done it because at that time, they still had faith in CJ Beathard, their rookie quarterback. They still had faith in him. So they probably would have done that. And you could have had Garoppolo for a first round pick. And you wouldn't have been losing games because your starting quarterback, DeShone Kizer, was screwing up with low passes, overthrown passes, too wide to the left, too wide to the right passes, just like the passes he was throwing today. Wasn't even hit, and he's throwing the ball in the dirt. Wasn't even hit, and he's throwing the ball at the fullback's feet in the end zone. Wasn't even hit, and he's throwing interceptions. You could have had Garoppolo. And then at that point, with the Texans bottoming out as we saw, then guess what you'd be spending your first round pick on? And do understand, a good quarterback opens up your running game. I want you to understand that once your quarterback starts hitting on passes, teams start playing off, start playing back, which opens up your running game. Because when you have a bad quarterback, they just crowd the line and play man to man, which is what happened to the Browns all season. That's why they're on 16. Garoppolo would have changed all that. People would have been grumbling about Crowell not being able to run the football because, hey, first off, he's not a shotgun runner. He's not that type of running back. That's Duke Johnson's forte. All right. Crowell is a lineup in the eye, lineup in the pro set. Run the ball right up the gut. Run the ball off of left guard, left tackle, guard, right tackle. He's that type of running back. Run the ball between center and left guard, center and right guard. That's the type of running back Isaiah Crowell is. And as we saw, when he gets the ball up in those spaces, in those positions where teams are not trying to stop the run, boom, he's picking up 10 yards or more per carry. You can't tell me I'm wrong there. But in the final half of the season, these past 4 games, you saw, except for the Chicago game, you saw the Browns players themselves try to win the game. The reason why the pass rush failed was because you lost, what is this? The other pass rusher. Last year's second round pick. Sorry, I've been so disenchanted from this team that I forget some of these players' names. Emmanuel Ogbah. You lost Ogbah with the foot injury 6 games ago. The pass rush went to crap. Carl Nassib, he's a good run stuffer, but he's not a pass rusher. All right. You lost Jamie Meter for the season. Caleb Brantley, Larry Ogunjobi, they're good run stuffers, but they're not pass rushers. So the only pass rusher that you had on the team was Myles Garrett. And I don't know if you guys have actually noticed, but I sat there on defense and I watched Myles Garrett virtually every defensive snap. A lot of holding calls went uncalled against Myles Garrett. He is the real deal. I saw a lot of holding calls against Myles Garrett. Of course, he had the offsides on, the field goal attempt and everything. I mean, he's a rookie player on an undisciplined team. I get it. But there was a lot of uncalled holding calls against Myles Garrett where if he wasn't held, quarterback's hit. If he wasn't held, quarterback sack. People think he was taking plays off. He wasn't taking plays off. It was just a bunch of non-calls. Flat out. I see arms around his waist. I see grabs on his shoulder pads. Okay. I see grabs around his thighs, his calves, his legs, his feet. Go uncalled. At any rate, I think if you get because they're keeping Hugh Jackson. They're going to keep Hugh Jackson. So at any rate, if you get an offensive coordinator, you need a tough, gritty type of offensive coordinator. Flat out. You need an offensive coordinator who coaches the offensive line to bust the defense in the mouth. You need an offensive coordinator that will run that ball where Hugh Jackson will quick the pass. You need an offensive coordinator that's going to run the ball. That's going to bring smash mouth football onto this team. Even though you may, because it looks like Josh Gordon, hopefully he'll stay healthy. Hopefully he won't have to enter rehab. Hopefully he won't succumb to substance abuse again. If he does, beautiful. If he doesn't, well, as far as I'm concerned, with your first 3 rounds in the draft, you need to address the wide receiver position. Again, you need a solid number 1 that you can completely depend on. Flat out. You need a running back that is going, because Duke Johnson is gone. He's not going to resign. He's gone. So you're going to need a starting running back. You can get that in free agency or the draft. And as far as quarterbacks go, after watching Sam Darnold against Ohio State, those of you who were Browns fans, I know you watched that game because you wanted to see if Sam Darnold would be able to play against NFL caliber defenses. That's the whole reason why you watched OSU versus USC. You didn't care whether or not you wanted OSU to win, but you wanted Sam Darnold to put on a spectacular performance. You wanted him to go out and do what he did against Penn State last year, but lose the game. You wanted it to be like a 56 to 55. The PAT was missed type of game. All right. Because OSU's defense is very bad, but it's very talented. It is a very NFL caliber defense that has been coached very badly. But for this game, it appears it's almost like Luke Fickell came back and coached this Buckeyes defense because they completely and utterly embarrassed USC's offense in Sam Darnold. I mean, Sam Darnold made some awesome throws, especially in the second half, because I watched that game. I was in Atlanta. I watched the game in the hotel room. I'm watching it, and I was like, wow, like, okay, he can make the throws, but he's not ready for NFL caliber players. He's not. It looks like he had never played against any defense in his college career that had NFL caliber players, because he was getting balls tipped, picked off. He couldn't. His offensive line couldn't handle the rush. He couldn't deal with the rush. It was almost like men against boys out there, because we do know that OSU has a lot of NFL caliber players on it. All right. Urban Meyer goes out. He's a great recruiter. He goes out and recruits NFL caliber players to play college football. It's all a matter of coaching these guys up. It's all a matter of coaching these guys up. And when they're coached up right, you're beating Alabama. Okay? You're beating Wisconsin. You're beating Oregon in championship games when they're coached right, when they're coached up. Matter of fact, you're not just beating them, you're blowing them out 58-0, 42-28. Okay? 42-13. You're destroying them. And you're watching 3 and 4 players go in the first round. You know? So if the Browns wind up drafting Sam Darnold with the number 1 overall pick, before you do that, you need to make a go with Kirk Cousins. You seriously need to make a go with Kirk Cousins. You need to sign him to a 4-year deal. Give him his money. Give him his NFL caliber, top 5 NFL caliber starter money. And do understand, 4 or 5 years ago, I said the Browns should have drafted Kirk Cousins. When we lost out to the RG3 sweepstakes, I said the Browns need to draft Kirk Cousins. But what happened? As an insurance policy, the Redskins in the 4th round drafted our Kirk Cousins. And I was like, damn it. But the thing is, they let Kirk Cousins sit for a couple of years because that's the type of quarterback that he was at that time. He wasn't an instant starter. He was a player that needed to sit for at least 2 years and start by year 3, which is exactly what happened. And look at him now. He's a 5,000 yard passer. And I know he's having a hard time winning out there in Washington. That's because that whole team is a mess. The Redskins are a mess. A good quarterback elevates you to at least 4 or 5 wins. But they're so poorly coached and their talent is so square pegged and round holes that you're lucky to get anything out of that. But if you put him on an offense where you actually have talent at wide receiver and at running back that actually fits the offense that you're trying to run, and Corey Coleman, and I have to say it, yes, Corey Coleman does fit Hugh Jackson's offense. Josh Gordon, as you saw today, does fit Hugh Jackson's offense. Even Rashard Higgins does fit Hugh Jackson's offense. The thing is, you need one more big body wide receiver, and that was the problem in letting Terrell Pryor go. Because in all honesty, once you signed Jamie Collins and Terrell Pryor was talking that mess, you should have went ahead and franchised him. And I know at the time, $15 million was a lot for a developing wide receiver, but that was a developing wide receiver that was your only playmaker on offense that almost had 100 yards in receptions and had over 1,000 yards receiving with 5 different quarterbacks. 5 different quarterbacks, and he went over 1,000 yards receiving, and he's a developmental wide receiver. Are you kidding me? You don't let potential, not just potential like a Ricardo Lewis potential. All right, no. That's almost in Josh Gordon's type of potential. That's what you saw out of Terrell Pryor, where it's like, wow, this kid, he can make the catch, he can get deep. He can burn Pro Bowl corners. All he needs is a complimentary wide receiver on the other side. All he needs is a complimentary tight end. You need somebody that's going to take off the pressure of the double and triple teams on him. You got Njoku, all right? Josh Gordon came back. Of course, he came back late. Corey Coleman was here. Of course, he came back late. But if Corey Coleman was healthy and you still had Terrell Pryor and now you had Josh Gordon coming back late in the season with Njoku in the middle, not to mention Self DeValve, who was up and down, but when he was up, boy, was he up. With Duke Johnson in the backfield, all you needed was a competent quarterback. All you needed was a competent quarterback. Oh, and you needed for your head coach / offensive coordinator to stop calling the most goofiest goofball junior high school sandlot type of, I'm going to start off with my left tackle 15 yards out wide, and then they're all going to come in and we're going to do this crazy formation just to run the ball on a wide receiver reverse for 3 yards that everybody sees coming. You need to stop calling those goofball plays. Just line up and play. Stop trying to be cute. So how do you fix this team? You fix this team by going out and if you can't get Kirk Cousins, Alex Smith, as we pretty much have a feel, he's done. He's done in Kansas City, just like Eli Manning is done in New York, but I think Eli Manning, when they cut him, I believe he's going to Jacksonville. Of course, it depends on how far Blake Bortles takes the Jaguars into the playoffs. If the Jaguars win a playoff game, Blake Bortles will probably wind up staying. But if not, he's out. You bring down Eli Manning with that offensive line, those wide receivers, that power running game. Eli Manning's going to take them to the Super Bowl. He's going to walk away with at least one more shot at the Super Bowl trophy down in Jacksonville next year. If Alex Smith comes, that'll be beautiful. At least you'll have a guy who can read a defense, who can at least complete some passes. All you have to do is just not call goofy plays. All the wide receivers have to do is just make the catches. Your offensive line appears to be set. It's just a matter of how does Joe Thomas come back. All he did was tear his triceps, which should be fine, should be repaired. It should be fine. He should be back to his regular Pro Bowl form. I really think that he actually needed, and I know it's going to be a crazy thing to say, but I think that he needed to get hurt and be out for a season with a non-career threatening injury just so he could take pretty much a year off to heal, to rest, to give his body a rest, to rejuvenate himself. Do you understand what I'm saying? He needed a season to rest, to rejuvenate himself, so that way he can come back. He can come back stronger than ever. Because remember, he had missed a snap in 11 seasons. That's a lot of wear and tear, and he played with a multitude of injuries. He needed a season off to breathe. So he got it. So your offensive line should be set. Coleman actually, as the season progressed, he got better. All right, he had a horrible game against the Titans, but after that, he rebounded. He had a very strong game, so your offensive line is set. Whoever you replace Isaiah Crowell with, I would say you go to the draft and get a running back to replace him with at quarterback. Like I said, you can go ahead and draft a quarterback, but he needs to sit behind either Kirk Cousins or Alex Smith. At wide receiver, you need to draft at least one more wide receiver, somebody that's going to be your number one playmaker, and maybe pick up two more wide receivers in free agency. Your defensive line, you need to get some fresh talent there at backup, some guys who are some pass rushers. We have enough run stuffers on the defensive line. You need some backup pass rushers because, as you saw, when Garrett is not in the game and when Emmanuel Agba is not in the game, the pass rush goes to crap. You need a new middle linebacker because Joe Schobert is serviceable, but he's not good. He's not good. His best game was against the Steelers, where he batted the ball up, and of course, Brown made the spectacular catch right before the half and raced 50-something yards to put them in scoring range. But other than that, he's just good at run stuffing, but not pass coverage. He's horrible at it. So you need a new middle linebacker. And let's face it, you need to revamp your secondary. You need two new corners, two bona fide, solid starters. All right, because Taylor and Brian Body Calhoun are not starters. They're serviceable for a minute, but they're not starters. And just so you all know, that's why Jabril Peppers was playing 25 yards off the ball, because your corners are so bad. Keep in mind now, Greg Williams watches these guys in practice. Your corners are so bad that you're afraid they're going to be burned and the teams are going to expose them. So therefore, you put your starting strong safety, who's playing out of position at free safety, 25 yards off the ball. So therefore, the team doesn't get burned, and you let a team dink and dunk and mid-range you down the field until you get in tight and hope that your goal line defense can stop them, which they cannot, because you telegraph your blitzes once you get down inside the 20-yard line, and therefore teams are able to throw touchdown passes all over you. Because your corners are so bad. They're so bad they can't even play in tight. And you need a free safety. You need a bona fide free safety. As much as I don't like Jordan Poyer, I think he's a POS, but you shouldn't have let him go because he's up in Buffalo balling. Also, you let Ed Reynolds go, who was serviceable last year as a free safety. There was McDonald was a free agent who played under Greg Williams for the LA Rams, for the LA Rams, and they didn't bother to bring him on and try him because Greg Williams said no, but at least he can play the position. Whether you liked him as a person or not doesn't matter. He was able to play the position. And you need to bring in some new kickers. You never should have let Cody Parkey go. I said that in the preseason. I said the Browns will be stupid to keep Gonzalez over Cody Parkey simply because he was a draft pick. And as you saw, we paid the penalty for that, whereas Miami flourished because of the Browns' mistake. So next year, with a whole new crop of talent, and an offensive coordinator, Hugh Jackson will be put to the test. And I'm pretty much guaranteeing you all this now, and I'm saying it now as I get ready to close this video out, is that whoever is the offensive coordinator that is hired by Hugh Jackson, who will also be part of who the GM picks as well as the offensive coordinator, will, if Hugh Jackson does not get at least 7 wins out of this team next year and show significant progress in the second half of the season, unlike this year, that offensive coordinator will wind up being the Browns' new head coach. I guarantee it. Just so you know. All right, fellas, I am out. I will see you all next season during, free agency and the draft and all of that. And we'll talk about who's getting cut and who's getting traded and everything. So, go Browns.